There is no profession anywhere
Yeah.
where you say, where a customer says, well, how much am I going to pay you for this work you're going to do for me? And your answer is, I'm not sure. How much have you got? That is not a professional conversation.
Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. On this episode of the show, recorded live at the Fearless Investing Summit by Nitrogen Wealth, Bob Veris, publisher of Inside Information, joined me for an honest look at where the financial planning profession stands today and where it's headed. This might be a challenging conversation for some folks in the audience, but it's an important one to have. Bob will definitely get you thinking about where your business is today and where it's going. Now, before we get to the conversation with Bob, please do make sure you take a moment to subscribe to the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And if you have a question or a suggestion for a topic or a guest, hit me up. I'm basically at Mike Langford everywhere on the internet, or you can shoot us an email, podcast@finsermarketing.com. Okay, let's get to the conversation with Bob Veris. Well, Bob Veris, wonderful to see you. Welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm excited. Well, thank Allie. She's off screen. You can't see her there. I can see her. Hi, Allie. So it's wonderful. She set this all up. We could have got all these guests without Allie. So props. There we go.
All right.
All right. So one of the ways I wanted to kick this off with you, Bob, I mean, you do a lot of really influential speaking. You're a consultant with lots of companies. You've actually been in this industry. I don't want to date you. We were kind of talking about our old guy stuff before we click record, but you've been in this industry for 40 years. And in a recent interview, you said something that really caught my attention. You said, the future is bright. The present is awkward. So that feels like a perfect framing for where we are right now. What makes the present so awkward? I mean, I know why I feel awkward, but what do you mean by that?
And we're not talking about my personality, right? We're talking about the profession.
Hey, look, man, there's only so much I can do in a short podcast and fixing you. But yeah, what do you see as making like today so awkward? Or what's the lens that you see that?
Well, there are a number of threads. And the most important, I think, is that, people call this an industry. And the people who I have the most respect for are not in an industry. They're not a channel. They're not looking for wallet share. They're professionals. And so to them, this is a profession. But it's not what you would call a profession by the definitions of one. And so there are a lot of cultural, I'm not sure what the word is, cultural similarities that need to be created before we can be a profession. Everybody needs to be on the same page. And if you've looked around, you've noticed that we have all these tribes. You have, the NAFA people, the FPA people, the broker-dealer people, the wirehouse people. And then there are sub-tribes, the people that don't take AUM, the people who... And so what we don't have is a common language and a common ethos in the profession that people can relate to. And I think one of the problems with organic growth is that nobody knows for sure what tribe you belong to or who you are or what you do, because it's not a common thing. If you go to a doctor, you're pretty sure you know what a doctor does.
Yeah.
If you go to a lawyer, unfortunately, you know what the lawyer does. When you go to a financial planner, well, yeah, do you sell insurance, or do you take commissions, or do you take an asset management fee out, and how much is that, and what's hidden and what's not hidden? And so that's one awkward part of the profession, is we have not yet created for the consumer, really, but for advisors also, the coherence, if you will.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I love that you brought up like the consumer doesn't know, right? And this industry, frankly, was founded on the opacity of information, the scarcity of information.
Right.
Right. When you think about why we ended up having stockbrokers in the first place, right? Before they were called advisors, they were called stockbrokers not too long ago.
Customers, man.
Yeah. And financial products are something that most people don't know much about, right? And so as a result, we needed a human being to go out there and sell it and translate to, why do you want this financial product? And as they transferred into financial advisors and financial planners, well, we didn't close the gap on financial literacy in this country. So there's still like this limit of information of like what the stuff that we're actually doing is. But then as you mentioned, there's another layer there, a lack of transparency on the actual profession itself.
We're guilty, I think, of carrying residual parts of the sales culture. Financial planners usually talk, you look at their websites, and they're talking about comprehensive wealth management. What does that mean? There's no accepted definition of something like that. They talk about tax-aware investing. Well, what does that mean? We've got this jargon that financial planners retreat to. And back in the day, and you can date me if you want. Charlemagne and I were friends back in the day, and so was. If you go back to the origins of it, people would create these long, complicated financial plans, mostly to convince themselves that what they were offering was valuable. The clients wouldn't read it, but they would. Well, now we retreat to jargon to convince ourselves that we're much smarter than the consuming public, and therefore they need us. And what I'm hoping is going to happen sooner or later is advisors are going to get the confidence that they've never really had to just speak plainly to clients and say, what can I do for you?
Yeah. It is interesting. I've been noticing it over the last several years. We've seen a pretty significant transition from exactly what you're describing, right? Of like, we help affluent families or wealthy families do this with tax, planning, and this is just kind of generic stuff, and moving towards not just niche marketing, but also getting very specific about the solutions that you offer for a client, right? Like, I help you with this type of stuff. If you are a business owner, I can help you with these types of things. If you have this type of family situation, I can help you with this type of planning. So we are starting to see a little bit of it, which is exciting, but I think you're right. We have a long way to go there. Let's transition a little bit in terms of the business itself and how it's done. You've been pretty vocal about we need to move off the AUM model. We've talked a little bit about it.
What an asshole.
I want to hear about it. So, because I've talked to a lot of people. In fact, I talked to Michael Kitsis and Alan Moore at XYPN, and they were talking about their vision for moving off AUM model, right? A fee-based model. Where do you see it? What's wrong with the AUM model first, I guess? And then what do you see as the logical replacement for it?
The replacement is harder. We'll get to that in a second. But what I see wrong with it is there is no profession anywhere where you say, where a customer says, well, how much am I going to pay you for this work you're going to do for me? And your answer is, I'm not sure. How much have you got? That is not a professional conversation right off the bat. It's an artifact of the sales profession, if you call that a profession. So, what I see is, fee for service of some sort.
Yeah.
And of course, the whole idea of managing assets is becoming commoditized. So you got these two threads. One is we've got to move away from this commission and drag, is what I call it.
Okay.
And the other is the way we charge is becoming commoditized, and the value is being given away. I call it like the toaster. Yeah. Savings and loan associations used to give away a toaster for everybody who opened an account. And then they all got in trouble, and the joke was that if you bought a toaster, they'd give you a savings and loan association because they're all underwater. But the conversation with a client, I'm going to charge you for the assets under management, and I'm going to give you financial planning. It's backwards.
Yeah. It is. It is interesting because when you tell any other business owner about this business model, especially particularly the AUM model, they're blown away. Number one, recurring revenue. Win the client once, keep the client happy, and the money just keeps coming. And in fact, it's going to grow as the client's assets grow, right? So, the logic behind the AUM model is, hey, I make more money when you make more money. When your assets grow, we're going to make more money together is the logic. There are some challenges with it, as you say. But I also wonder, and this is going to lead us into the next conversation I think we're going to have together about talent. One of the things that's made this industry so attractive to people is the notion of like, I can I can look at the math. I can say, okay, great. I get in. If I build my client base like this, wow, I'm going to be making X amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars of revenue a year consistently. What a great lifestyle to have.
You're going to be making money while you sleep.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Like, so I guess diving in a little bit, like how do you see things changing? Because we do have that war for talent. What's a model that is really great for the client, in line with some of the things you were saying are out of line, but also great for attracting that next gen of advisors?
Let's pull a bunch of threads together.
Okay.
This is part of the awkwardness thing. And it's also part of the revenue model, and it's also part of the attracting talent model. You talk to somebody in their 30s and 40s and you say, would you pay an asset management fee for somebody to give you financial planning advice? And they laugh at you. Now, I take that laughter as kind of a clear no, and maybe I'm reading something into it when I say that, but and last time I checked, those 30 and 40-year-olds are going to be the client of the future. They're going to be, when they become 40s, 50s, 60s, they're the attractive clients, and they never, ever want to pay an AUM fee, okay? So that's number one. Number two, you've got all these people people who want to become advisors, but they're idealistic. And that's a trend that I'm seeing more and more now, is the new advisors are more idealistic than the founding advisors. The new advisors want to work with people in their cohort, which is young people that are not wealthy, and they want to be able to change their lives. They want to be able to, we give a lot of lip service to changing lives, and a lot of the founders, yeah, I change lives, and they do to a large extent, but that's not what drove them into the business.
Right.
What you're talking about is where they came from. The talent pool that's coming into the business wants to be able to work with those younger people in a way that they can afford. And that means having some kind of a fee for service, maybe on demand, maybe a la carte. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but I know what it's not going to be.
Yeah.
And what it's not going to be is the way we do it now.
Yeah. That's really interesting that you say that. And I'm glad you talked about, frankly, the origin story, if you will, right, of a financial advisor's career. Because as I said earlier in this podcast, most of today's active financial advisors got their start when they were called stockbrokers, right? The average age of a financial advisor is now and probably always will be around 60.
They look like me.
Right?
We can't have that.
Part of it is survivor bias, right? Most advisors wash out by year 5. They don't stay, right? So you get a lot of washout. So you're going to skew a little bit older anyway. And those who have, thriving businesses are likely to get to that maturity stage. So most of those guys, and it is mostly guys and gals, got their start, I guess maybe in the 80s or 90s, and they were selling product, right? And that was the name of the game, was sell.
They were selling product, or they were selling managing assets.
Right, exactly.
And selling is the word.
Yeah, that's right. And so if you get your career in I'm out there killing stuff, bringing on new business, dialing for dollars, the old school Wolf of Wall Street way, which actually is closer to reality of not the fraud part, but that's just the way that we used to work. You make auto dialer on, making 500 calls a day. If that's how you get your start, you're thinking, I got to constantly bring on business. It's all about the profit, even though you can still care about your client, of course. It doesn't mean that the AUM advisors who did it that way don't care about the clients. It just means it's different.
They did a lot of good things for their clients. There are many stories about that.
Yeah.
But the awkwardness is that the younger clients and younger planners don't want to do things the way the older planners did it with the older clients.
Yeah.
And that's somehow that transition is going to have to manifest. But we've got this thing called inertia.
Yeah.
My ancient enemy as a writer is inertia in this profession.
Yeah.
And people who look like me don't want to change things. I'll retire, maybe in 10 or 15 or 20 years, and I don't want to change anything. And this new AI stuff, I'm not sure what that is, but, I've got this program I'm comfortable with that was written in Fortran, so what happens is the advisory profession is not really that welcoming or attractive to the people who learned financial planning and wanted to get into financial planning for very different reasons.
Yeah.
And so the war for talent is basically Vanguard and Fidelity and Schwab scooping up a bunch of people who are disappointed in their options in the real profession.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you talked about inertia. And it's funny. You obviously read the prep doc I sent over to you because inertia is like the next topic. So we're already here. This is awesome.
I'm way ahead of you.
You're way ahead.
Totally ahead of you.
So I had a friend of mine who talked about, in terms of why people don't change financial institutions, and whether that's a bank or a financial advisor, why they stay when they could move. And he said, money has inertia, right? Money has a momentum, an inertia to it, where if you're with, I'll use Bank of America, I don't know, unless Bank of America does something really bad, you're not going to go through the rigmarole, the pain in the butt of moving your money, right? Because so much stuff is tied up in there. And the same is true for a client with a financial advisor, I think. As long as the financial advisor is not like greatly failing the client,
Right.
they're going to stay, right? But to your point, like things happen, inertia breaks the other way too, right? You can be doing something one way and you have inertia, you're sticking with it, is what I'm hearing you say. But if you're not paying attention, the world is gaining momentum and inertia in a different system, right? You're talking about these younger advisors, these more mission-driven advisors who want to actually have an impact.
They do studies on these cascading events, and the term came from what they would do is they would pile sand, and it turns out that there's that one grain of sand that causes the avalanche of the pile of sand, and you don't know which grain that's going to be, but you know eventually there is that one grain of sand, and you know there will be that avalanche. There will be an avalanche away from AUM toward fee-for-service, toward younger, more idealistic advisors working with clients in a niche capacity. And most advisors that I talk to, the founding advisors, the people who are running things, who are making decisions, are putting off as long as they can that cascade. But the cascade is not going to wait for them. Once the cascade happens, we're going to have another one of those extinction events like 2000, like 1985 or 6, which nobody goes back that far. The Great Recession was a washout event.
Yeah.
This will be a much bigger washout event, I think, where a whole bunch of companies will find themselves to be outmoded. And if they're not listing their younger advisors, if they're not actively recruiting younger advisors and letting them create the firm that they want to run someday, they're going to be in a lot of trouble when that last grain of sand hits.
That's really interesting to say that, because we work with a few clients who are in the transition space, right? Helping advisors sell their business, right? Exit the business, sell it to another advisor or another firm. And then they also take the other side of helping advisors acquire the other firm. This is an interesting time to be alive because like valuation has been great because again, that AUM model has been fantastic. It's like, it's really valuable. You're telling me I can buy a recurring revenue stream and add it to my recurring revenue stream and just, it keeps humming and I might be able to improve it, but
it is a PE firm's wet dream.
Oh, it is. And it's the reason why we get PE in here so much, right? And actually, we started seeing banking coming in here, right? For the longest time, banks wouldn't lend to the financial advisory space. They didn't understand it. Plus, there's no assets. There was no factory. There's no equipment. But suddenly, a few firms out there have convinced them, look, this revenue stream is amazing and it just keeps coming. And so it's going to be fascinating to see how that changes. Because I do agree. You are seeing a lot of advisors. I mean, it's not that I agree. It's like we are seeing the evidence, right? Of younger advisors, exactly what you say. They want to help their friends. They want to work in a more service-minded environment. They're less concerned about AUM. It's going to be really fascinating to see how it goes.
My newsletter, every month, I try and figure out where it's going and what are the transitional steps to it. And I feel like every month I fall short of that goal. It's not, you can't really totally pin it down. You can kind of approximate it and hope you're right. And then the next newsletter, and we haven't really talked about technology. We're here at the Nitrogen Conference, which, has a tech, I think
let's make a pivot. Let's do it.
I really think this AI thing is going to be big someday. It's kind of like, I keep thinking the internet is going to be big someday,
I've heard about this.
Yeah, it's just you mark my words.
I don't know if what are they calling it? E-shopping, e-commerce? I don't think that's going to work though.
Yeah, I agree. I just flash the pen.
Well,
We are now in the fastest evolutionary stage ever in the tech world. I used to be the tech guy.
Yeah.
Before I recruited Joel to be the tech guy because Joel Bruckenstein was better at it than I was. But I still do a lot of technology writing. In fact, I'm writing about the end game in AI right now, and it'll come out in March.
Oh, awesome.
But we're in the most rapid evolutionary stage ever, and then we're going to hit a doldrums where the end stage is reached.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a really interesting. It's kind of like, you're driving a car and all of a sudden you hit a wall. The evolution will stop for some period of time. I don't know for how long.
Yeah.
And a lot of the tech platforms, the tech stacks, the tech companies are going to have to be completely turned over. And I can hardly wait for those people who are riddled with inertia to face that moment. And I'm trying to prepare people, I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah.
But
it is really interesting. You're thinking about tech, I've said this once or twice before, and I do like saying it because it's kind of a little brag moment. I am the last generation of adults to become an adult before the internet existed, right? I graduated college in 1994, right? The internet wasn't on your desk when you got into the workforce.
I'm glad we're dating you and not me. This is a good switch.
Hey, listen, man, I use a lot of sunscreen, so you keep this bad boy looking good. Anyway, but like, I remember the internet becoming the thing. I remember getting a cell phone and being the first person in my household that had a cell phone. Like, these things were brand new, and it's not like I'm 90, right? Things moved really quickly, right? Within less than 5 years from 1994 entering the workforce, suddenly online trading, discount trading was there, right? When I started working for Fidelity Investments, our lowest trade was like $25 a trade. And then, now it's zero. So your comment, not only does technology like change the business, the way we do business, the way we interact, it changes
who we are,
and it changes the business structure too, right? It can all of a sudden make whether AUM, we might be talking 10 years from now, and AUM might be gone if technology does something.
Siri, tell me what would be an efficient portfolio given what you see in my brokerage account.
Yeah.
Tell me what I should change right now to make my portfolio more resistant to a market downturn.
Yeah.
And Siri will not only tell you, but it'll send you a message that you can send to your institution.
Yeah. What'll be interesting too is at the moment, we all feel somewhat insulated from AI because there is some components of like, it can't be superhuman in terms of like the humanity component of, we always say AI can't hand you a tissue, give you a hug, all that type of stuff when you're sitting in a meeting. But it's going to be really interesting to see as people, as consumers, financial consumers and financial advisors get more adept at using it. And obviously the AI tools will get better, how things change, right? So the description of you said like, talk to me about the efficiency of my portfolio and this and that. That's the reason why you need a financial advisor, because the average consumer has no idea what you just said about anything. Most of them have no idea what the difference between a stock, bond, and mutual fund is,
right,
or anything like that. But when they start to learn to ask the right questions of AI, right? Just as they learn to ask the right questions when they Google something, or just now that every teenage kid in America can make a full-length movie on their iPhone while they're walking around. Like, it's pretty crazy.
We're all going to be prompt engineers.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
The difference, though, the thing that I'm always coming back to, is I remember when software was introduced in the profession, and there were three reactions to it. the first reaction was, oh my God, we're doomed. This is over. This stuff is doing what I do.
Right.
The second was, I'm certainly not going to use this newfangled computer thing. The good old HP 12C is good enough for me.
Right.
And the third was, this is pretty cool. I could use this and I'd be a lot more efficient and maybe more effective with clients, and that has always been the winning attitude.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the winning attitude with AI.
It's so funny. I interviewed somebody. I won't out them, but no, I'm not joking. I literally had somebody whip out their HP 12C on a podcast like within the last 2 years.
Okay.
As if it was a bragging moment. It's like, I'm glad you remember how to use it, but please don't do that in front of your client.
I was going to bring a slide rule because that's what we used when I was in college, but
chalkboard.
Not everybody knows what a slide rule is, much less wants to see one.
I don't care how the sausage is made, just make the sausage. I'm hungry, right? This is great. Yeah. All right, so I want to get more into your vision for the future. I know we don't have much time left together, but as you said, you send out your newsletter. You spend a lot of time thinking about where the world is going. So as you look at the next, 3 to 5 years, what do you think are the most pronounced things that are likely to happen?
Well, the shift in revenue model is a pretty big one.
Yeah.
The AI taking over the fintech world is a pretty big one.
Yeah.
But what I think the biggest, most profound change is going to be what you call niche, I call specialty.
Okay.
I'm working with anybody and everybody, and therefore I have no secret marketing sauce whatsoever. And people don't know what I do for a living and they're a little afraid of me, and I only close like 40% of the people who come in my office.
Yeah.
And that's going to change. And the way to change it is to have a specialty. Like, a doctor is a knee surgeon. You know what that person does. They do it all day long and they're really good at it. And if I went to a general practitioner and I said, I want you to start operating on my knee, and by the way, can you, cure this disease that I have, and something, no general practitioner can do those things. They refer to a specialist.
Right.
What I'm envisioning is we have general practitioners. They'll be there, but they will refer out to specialists. They'll say, I'm going to do triage with you. I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to do a financial plan. But for you being a senior executive at, let's say a drug company, maybe even a particular drug company, I know a financial planner who works with senior executives at whatever the company is, Novartis or whatever, and I'm going to send you to that person for the full service financial planning that I do. And so the whole referral network is going to become this fiduciary superconductor. Whoever needs, and I'm not going to keep that client for myself. A fiduciary wouldn't do that. If somebody goes to somebody who specializes in people who are doctors in residency, and that person happens to be a Novartis executive, I'm not going to take that client.
Yeah.
As a fiduciary, I'm going to send them to the person I happen to know who specializes in what they do. And the profession is going to become this far more valuable, far more intimate, far more, and where AI threatens, I think, is the general practitioner.
Mm.
Where AI doesn't threaten is somebody who knows the idiom, who knows the particular challenges. So whenever somebody walks in the door, you know what their challenges are before they even open their mouth.
Yeah.
And then they do open their mouth and you uncover other challenges. And that's a high ground that's going to be really hard for anybody to scale.
That's a really interesting model. I do think it's fascinating. If you talk to doctors, obviously because insurance claims are in there, they'll rail against this type of thing. Like, hey, as a general practitioner, I'm going to see, so many patients a day and only I have 15 minutes for them. But as you're saying, first of all, different business, but also these AI tools are going to help advisors serve more clients, right? More efficiently, and get them what the help they need for the specific situations they're in.
It's an argument I've had with Michael Kitces. Arguing with Michael Kitces is difficult because he does a lot more speaking than you do in the course of the argument, in the debate. But My side, his side of the argument is that you're not any more profitable with your tech stack than you would be if you didn't have a tech stack.
Sure.
And you can't serve any more clients because there's only a certain amount of brain space and relationship space. I think that's wrong.
Okay.
I think that with these note-taking apps, with a super CRM, which I think is what's coming, and with an AI overlay on all client data, you don't have to know. Most of what I know is in my computer.
Right.
Most of what they know about their clients is going to be in the system. All they need to do is refresh their minds when they go into a meeting with a lot more information than they have now. And so I think, the 1 to 100 bottle or whatever the number is, 75 or 100, is going to be 1 to 200.
Interesting.
And of course, that's going to make it a little less problematic that we have fewer advisors coming into the profession.
Right.
And if we can keep those advisors that wash out because they hate the way people look like me run their business, we'd solve the problem in a year, less than a year.
And it will be interesting, right? The models will change for sure. You're under the model of, a fee for service, as we're describing, where you might make, charge a client $3,000 a year for financial planning and a little bit of asset management, or whatever that is. You take your pick of the number.
If you're a specialist, you could charge a lot more.
Yeah. And obviously, if your clients can afford that more, right? But some of those, the entry level client, they're mass affluent, maybe they're not charging. Well, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
The path to the solo advisor who runs, $100 million AUM, charging 100 basis points, so generating $1 million of revenue might not be there anymore. But that doesn't mean these businesses won't be incredibly profitable, right? What you may see is advisors starting a business and growing it with several other advisors working for them, right? And growing it like any other business out there. Love it.
I think it's a bright future. I really do.
Oh, I do too. We're always going to need, I said it earlier, you're always going to need some form of human connection, right? All right. So we're at the end of our time together, but I want to make sure people get to know you a little bit more. So website is bobveris.com, correct?
Yes.
Where else can people hang out with you and learn more about all the awesome stuff you're doing?
They can send me an email message, bob@bobveris.com.
It's easy to remember.
We are in the early stages of all of us recruiting our own neural networks, which means friends, neighbors, colleagues that we can ask questions of, and they do your thinking for you. My neural network is my newsletter, and people send me messages and say, what about this? I don't know.
Yeah.
I send a message out to my readers and folks, and they do know.
Okay.
They give me answers, and I parse through the answers and package it up in a coherent way. And I do that over and over and over again. So if they send me an email and say, here's what I'm seeing, or here's what I know, or they're part of my neural network and they are beneficiaries of it.
I love it. I've never thought about your network as a neural network, but it's true, right? Especially if you use it properly.
They're way smarter than I am. That's part of the problem.
That's also a good way of going about life. Assume that everybody you're interacting with is smarter than you. Helps you out a lot. Some of the best people, I got to get better at that, asking more questions and treating it like everybody else is just an opportunity to learn.
We ask a few questions in this podcast.
I guess so. Yeah. Well, anyways, you're a fantastic guest. I really appreciate you carving out the time. This has been awesome.
I've enjoyed it myself.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for listening to and or watching this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's always fantastic to have you with us. Huge props to my man, Bob Veris, for swinging by and spending some time with me in person while the whole hullabaloo of the conference was going on in the background. Awesome stuff. Thank you, Bob. Really appreciate it. As I mentioned at the top of the show, please do take a moment to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already on your favorite podcast platform. And, be nice to each other. We'll see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. See ya. Bye.